Well, good afternoon, friends. Good afternoon. Welcome. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Dune and Friends. My name is Dune Nguyen, and today we have a wonderful guest joining us from the beautiful British Columbia, and we have Charmaine Hammond in the house, everybody. And before we get Charmaine to join us for an hour and a bit here to have conversation about all kinds of wonderful things, trust and healthy relationships and collaboration. Let me just do a quick introduction so that you know who it is that you're hearing from. And for those of you who do know Charmaine, hopefully you will enjoy this conversation here and getting to know her even a bit more. And feel free, folks, to comment in the comment section and really engage and interact with us, and put her on the hot seat a little bit if you like. Not too hot now, but a little bit if you like. And I'm glad to see that, Charmaine, you can hear me in the green room still. That's good. We're good to go. So Charmaine Hammond, CSP, Certified Speaking Professional, is a highly sought after business keynote and workshop speaker, entrepreneur, author, and educator who teaches and advocates for the importance of developing trust, healthy relationships, and collaboration in the workplace. She has helped clients in many industries to build resilient and engaged workplaces, and develop high trust and high accountability relationships, and solve workplace issues and conflicts that gets in the way of success and profitability. She is respected as a no fluff and rich content speaker who delivers tangible tools to help to step into action immediately, and delivering her programs in person and virtually. She's a certified virtual presenter through eSpeakers as well. And she brings results and facilitates change. This formal correctional officer, she worked in jails, and corporate dispute resolution expert, now travels the world and teaching the principles of collaboration and communication and conflict resolution and resilience. She also has an extensive background facilitating process to help collaborations and workplace teams relationship when they go sideways. She also has been called to several communities that experience disasters to help with the rebuilding, resilience, and recovery processes. Now, her corporate clients have included all levels of government, oil and gas sector, and trade associations, and companies, obviously health and nursing and engineering and safety and many more. Technology businesses and human resources and community partnership departments and educational institutions, police, fire, rescue, and nonprofit organization, and everything in between. She has presented to more than 400,000 people worldwide, and her extensive background in the corporate and small business nonprofit worlds, and her past role as a contract negotiator specialist for government and business owner. She has an interesting perspective on being on all sides of the collaboration table, and she owns several businesses over the past 23 years. She has a master's degree in conflict management and analysis, and a best-selling author of the 5 books, and featured in 6 others. And of course, a CSP, or Certified Speaking Professional. Charmaine has been featured in renowned publications such as Inc., Occupational Health and Safety magazines, and many others, as well as having appeared as a guest on numerous TV and radio shows. And she's a co-producer of an animated film in which will be released in late 2020, and features many widely known celebrities. And this movie and movement was designed to help communities after disaster. With that wonderful and rich introduction, friends, please help me in welcoming our guest, the very special Charmaine Hammond, all the way from beautiful British Columbia. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm great. I feel like I should be running down an aisle.
Yeah.
Like this. Woo!
In honor of your beautiful British Columbia, I have a little bit of a Rocky Mountain or something like that in the background there, right? So that is in between our two provinces there, right? So tell us, Charmaine, thank you so much for joining us for the hour and a bit here. Tell us a bit more of an expanded, fill in the blanks a little bit. Tell us in your own words, how'd you got here, my friend? How'd you got here?
What a journey. Well, I often shake my head and wonder about that, because when I was a child, I was actually painfully shy, didn't enjoy being in groups, certainly would never have wanted to be on a stage or be in public. And something really shifted for me in grade 9. And I think we've all had those mentors in our life, those people who, at the time, we may not even know the impact. But for me, it was my grade 9 teacher, Ms. Urstikatis, but she let us call her by her last name. And she really changed things around for me in grade 9. She helped me find my voice and find confidence. And I think I can safely say that it was Ms. Urstikatis that actually became my inspiration to take a career in corrections. And for a shy child, that was kind of an unusual choice. But it's funny, Dune, because that experience many, many years ago, right out of college, or in fact, I was the youngest inmate, or the same age as the youngest inmate. I was not an inmate. Let me correct that. I was on the outside of the bars, but I was the same age as the youngest inmate. I was just 18 going on 19. And that experience just taught me so much. And in this kind of windy, twisted, indirect pathway, here I am many years later teaching people about conflict resolution and collaboration, all the skills that were necessary for us to stay safe in the correctional world.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It really resonated with me in the sense of the life is very holistic, and one aspect of life which seems to be so far different than the rest is very much applicable and is very much overlapping, is very much contributing. So I see, obviously throughout your career, you see all the convergence of all the different things kind of coming together. Tell us a little bit about when did you get into the whole kind of speaking and training and coaching? Obviously, correctional officer as an early career there, and taught you a lot of skills in conflict management and working with people. When did you get into speaking? And you wrote a few books as well, of course. Many books.
Well, the speaking came from when I left the correctional world. I was working in an adult male prison, and then from there worked for a short time in a halfway home for women coming out of federal penitentiary. And then I really found my passion actually working with young offenders. And by the time I left that career, I was a leader. I had worked myself through the ranks and became the director of a young offender facility in Ontario. And I learned that I really liked mentoring people. I learned that I really liked teaching or guiding people on skill sets. And when I left that career to follow the man I love, and I'm now married to, Christopher, we followed
Lucky
him
Chris, yes.
Lucky Chris, I followed him all across the prairies, right to Fort McMurray, Alberta, where the jail was closed. Lots of people could have filled it, but the jail was closed. It was not open for business. And I had to get a new career. So I took a job running a nonprofit organization. Really my first time working in the nonprofit world, loved it. And then from there, I found that I was missing the process of helping people work through challenging issues. Went back to school, got trained as a mediator, certified as a chartered mediator, and then got a master's degree. And that's when I opened my business. And very quickly, Dune, I was mediating all day and then hired a number of staff. At the time we moved, I had 8 staff working for me. And my role started to shift fairly early on as companies were approaching my mediation practice to not only have us facilitate dispute resolution for them in their workplaces, but to also create customized training programs and train the trainers and help them set up mediation programs in their HR shops. Even a couple of companies contracted me to create their whole internal dispute resolution process, policies and the guidelines for employees and leaders to follow. And that's where I fell into speaking and mentoring and loved it, and shifted from moving away from mediating into speaking and training.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to pause on this and sort of pull out a couple things from this conversation that we had so far. And that is, in your correctional officer role and in that sort of in that role for the how many ever years you filled it, were there some key lessons that you took from that help your career and help you working with people and help you as a person? What could one learn from that kind of a role?
There's a lot of key learnings. And when I look back now, Dune, I kind of shake my head and think, boy, I was awfully young for that job.
Yeah.
But you know what? One of the lessons, my mom and dad, my whole family really embraces kindness. My parents modeled that. They talk about kindness. They talk about respect in our family. It's one of our core family values. And when I started working in the prison system, I learned very early on that when you are kind and when you are respectful, regardless of why someone is in prison, when you treat humans with kindness and respect in a jail setting, you are a lot safer. So fortunately for me, I did not have as many physical attacks and hostage takings as other colleagues that I worked with who tended to egg on the inmates and exasperate conflict. So that was one lesson. And it was so powerful for me, Dune, back in the correctional days that fast forward many years later, I actually created a kindness tour and went right across North America in a Winnebago with my husband and my dog, Toby, with one mission, and that was to inspire kindness. So that was one of the lessons I learned that has just stuck with me forever, that kindness and respect is so important, and connection, the power of connecting. And now in these times we're living in, that element of connection is so important.
Yeah. I do remember the kindness tour, and tell us a bit more about that. Let's sort of expand on it. But how long was it? A few months, right, or a few weeks? Or
It
tell us
felt
more.
like a year. Yeah, it was a year getting ready.
Yeah.
I never would have believed that. If somebody told me you need to set aside a year to get ready for a 6-week North American tour, I would have thought, come on. And honestly, it took a year to get ready. And we, of course, built this project on collaboration. So we brought in partners and champions and collaboration organizations and sponsors. And really, the essence of this tour was we left Vancouver, traveled all across Canada into the States, and then came back through Vancouver. And the tour combined a number of activities. I was doing a lot of speaking at organizations and businesses on the topics of kindness, acceptance, and respect in the workplace, and some of the other topics I speak on, resilience and conflict resolution. But we also had a number of events with my dog. Now, some of you who don't know me are wondering, what's this corporate speaker person at jail guard doing presentations with her dog? Is she a dog trainer? No, I'm not. But I wrote several books about my dog, Toby. And he was my teacher. When you were asking, Dune, about the lessons from jail, I learned just as many lessons from being a correctional officer about human connection and communication and trust and patience from Toby, my dog. He became an incredible teacher for me. And when I wrote my children's books, which were about bully prevention, we created the tour around that. So we presented at a number of schools and boys and girls clubs and children's groups and even community events. We actually met with a group home of young people in a dog park. I would never recommend that again. It's not a great place for a presentation, but it was fun. So it involved a number of activities, and all of the activities were directed or linked to the concept of kindness, acceptance, and respect.
Yeah. Well, I know you haven't sent me photos of that, but I'm a bit of a resourceful guy, So I'm gonna bring this in here and see if you. Let's go take a trip down memory lane here.
I love it. Yes.
Charmaine.
Oh, there's Winnebago. Oh, and then I love that. Thank you for showing that. And there's, I think in some of the pictures you'll see there he is, Bucky the Beaver, and he's the mascot of our motorhome sponsor, Fraser Way RV, and they gave Toby. So this is in 2015. They gave Toby several stuffed animals, which were little beavers, and it's the only toy that has survived. Really, it has, other than Goober filled toy, he just treasures that toy still. And there's the Winnebago, and we did all kinds of fun things like honk for kindness, and it was great to just be driving down the road and people, honking and shouting out their window, and made many interesting stops along the way. Did acts of kindness along the way, which was probably my very favorite part of the tour.
Very cool. Very cool. So thank you for sharing that part of the journey. I mean, there's so many dimensions to your journey, and it was nice to kind of pause on that a little bit.
I like the pun. I like the
pun. So let's, what we're going to do is we're going to fast forward to the present day. So we're going to come back. We're going to go into the time machine, go back and actually discuss various parts and glean out some lessons and some insights and hear some stories along the way. But let's fast forward to the present day. Obviously, as a speaker, trainer, and coach, COVID has impacted you in immeasurable ways. But tell us a little bit about your perspective on COVID's impact and your perspective on that, my friend.
Yeah. It's a great question. And a lot of the organizations, so the leaders, the HR professionals, the frontline supervisors that I'm talking to, whether it's in corporations, nonprofits, associations, even government, what I'm hearing from them is that they're noticing more conflict and more tension and old issues that are popping up. And that's very normal. In fact, when I was a mediator, I would always tell my clients that what existed before crisis generally always worsens and intensifies. So if you had conflict, unresolved issues in your workplace before a crisis, such as COVID, or working remotely, it's likely that it's going to intensify and amplify. And so a lot of leaders are finding this very difficult right now because their team may not be working physically together. So they are relying on platforms like Zoom or email. And email is not a place that people should be resolving conflict through ever, right, especially in these times. So we're finding that there's some relationship challenges, old issues that have popped up. I'm also seeing this other side, though. I've talked to a lot of employees and leaders, and I'm hearing things like, I'm so grateful for what we had in our team, and I didn't actually realize how strong our team was until we all started working apart from each other. So there's these two kind of scenarios. The other challenge is that some companies have really, and government and nonprofits have really faced hardship. They have lost employees, lost revenue, had to change the way they deliver their service, run their business. And this level of change is really, really challenging people right now. And when I listen to them talking, the way that many of them describe their situation reminds me of a great book I read. I don't know if you read this book, Dune, but I love it. It's Managing Transitions by William Bridges. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie. And he talks about how change actually begins with an ending, something ending. And so if we look at all the endings that people have had in their personal and work and business lives since COVID, since March, there's a lot of endings that are being sorted through for new beginnings to happen. And Bridges says that what we're in right now, this middle zone, which I call the messy zone, is really tough for people. The old way's not out, the new way's not in, and we're sort of on this tightrope trying to figure it out together. And I'm hearing this from a lot of the workplaces and community groups that I work with.
Right. Yeah. Certainly difficult time for everybody in many different ways, and also as you alluded to, also some opportunities that some people are seizing as well. So it's a very I'm going to call it extreme time, you know.
Yes.
So some people are really more grateful than they used to be. Some people are more depressed than they used to be. It's just sort of cranked up everything. It like magnifies everything.
Yeah. And relationships are really being challenged. I know I feel really blessed because my husband Christopher and I have worked together from home for many, many years, the last 10 years. So we've become really good at living together and working together and hanging out together in free time. And it took us a while to figure that out, honestly. And I'm sure if he were standing here, he'd be saying, oh yeah, it took us a long time. So we didn't have to go through that bumpiness that a lot of people are facing right now of being together all the time with their family or their partner. And you know, that's a challenge. In fact, I've had several emails in the last few months taking me way back to a former life when I was a mediator. I actually started out mediating separation and divorces, and I've had several requests from people. Hey, can you do a divorce mediation for us? No, I don't do mediation anymore. So I'm actually seeing that, unfortunately, some relationships are not able to withstand the pressures on them right now.
So thank you for sharing that. And you know, when you think about your own kind of time, you and Chris, I understand you're working on something exciting as well in the middle of COVID here. Tell us a little bit about that. Whatever you can share publicly, I know is probably not quite all ready to share yet.
Yeah, I can't share much at all, but I am working on an animated film, which is really, really exciting. Also working on a couple of new books and really another movement tied around that. And I'll be able to talk more about that in about November, but it's super exciting. But, you know, one of the things that I've really found with these new projects that I'm working on is I'm so appreciating the collaborative responses that I'm seeing right now in all areas of my life, personally and in business. There just seems to be such a, I don't know if it's a comfort or a movement towards people really wanting to connect, really wanting to work in partnership, wanting to support one another's projects. And I know for me, I don't know if you're seeing that, Dune, in your circle of connections, but people doing really interesting things right now. And I've seen new businesses that have started up during COVID. I've seen people write books. I've seen them create movements. And that's really exciting for me to see when we think about resilience, that our world is going through such a difficult, challenging, and ever so quickly changing time. And people are finding these opportunities to create something that matters for them. So that for me is exciting to see all these mission-driven projects that are coming out right now.
Cool. Wonderful. Tell us a little bit more about the mediation. So, I mean, when you mediate, is it mostly for corporations and governments, sort of larger organizations, sort of organizational? Is it across multiple organizations, or is it mostly within an organization?
Yeah. When I was a mediator, and I don't mediate anymore, but however, I train people on the skills of mediation and conflict resolution. When I was a mediator, I used to work in a variety of capacities. So I started out initially facilitating the resolution of family disputes. So teenager parent conflict, I loved mediating those. I probably mediated more curfew discussions than anyone I know. And then, of course, separation and divorces, which was a big part of my work. Very difficult work, but so valuable for families who are ending a marriage to find that they can still co-parent together cooperatively. And I really enjoyed the way that those processes would unfold. And then I specialized in workplace conflict, and which took me into multi-party conflict. So I think the biggest mediation I did was in the emergency services sector, and it was 65 participants. And then I also started doing a lot of multi-stakeholder facilitations. So facilitations of municipalities with neighboring municipalities, levels of government, and some of their organizations in the community. And I really enjoyed that work because of the diversity of people's needs and viewpoints, and the way that a group of people, when they're focused on a common goal, which is finding a solution that people can live with. I don't use the word win-win because honestly, Dune, in all the mediations I've done with thousands of people, hundreds and hundreds of conflicts, nobody ever walked away saying, well, that was a win-win. You know, they mostly say something like, I can live with this. This solved the issues in the best way possible. And that's what we looked for. And now I love the ability to provide training to organizations on resolving conflicts. So maybe they won't need to go to a formal process like mediation because they'll be able to manage it within their own team. And of course, training leaders on how to facilitate, actually how to be the mediator essentially in their workplace. And that's a skill set that not a lot of leaders have, yet they're being required to be mediators in employee disputes all the time in the workplace. So they tell me they feel unprepared and a lack of confidence without that training.
Yeah. I mean, conflict is of course part of life. Conflict is in fact very important to manage and to mitigate and do all those kinds of things. Now, so it's very complex, but at the same time, I was wondering if you might have a few insights top of mind that you want to share to the viewers out there who are watching now or later in the recorded version of the video, just some ideas to help them kind of manage their own conflicts within the organizations or families that they work in. Any sort of top of mind ideas for them to consider?
Yeah, the first one I'm going to give is a quote by someone named Judge Esty. And I don't know who Judge Esty is, but I love the quote. And the quote is, conflict is not like wine. It doesn't get better with age.
Yep.
The tip number one is there is a tendency, because most of us as humans feel uncomfortable in conflict and disagreement. We're nervous about it. We don't want to hurt someone's feelings. We just hope it'll go away. We avoid it. And that's a tendency for the large majority of people. Or they come at it from a very combative perspective, like an us against them, me against you framework. And when conflict is left to simmer, my experience has been is that it intensifies, gathers more people. So on a Monday, the conflict or disagreement might have been 2 people, but by Friday happens, they've engaged their colleagues, their family, people have built kind of their camps, and the conflict becomes more deeply protracted and very difficult to resolve. So the earlier you can have the conversation, the better. And the second tip is the way that we think about conflict. And when I was a mediator, and I used to do what's called a pre-mediation, that's where we would meet with each of the parties separately to help prepare them for mediation and to make sure that the mediation was appropriate for them. There was no safety issues. They were able to participate fully. And I remember noticing a pattern that there were about 40% of the clients that would come into my office with a framework or a mindset of a willingness to resolve the issue. And then there was another 40% of the people that would come into my office, and it seemed that their mindset was, you know, this is going to be a difficult conversation. We're up for a battle. You know, there's going to be a winner and a loser. They were very combative. And then the other 20% was sort of all over the map. And what I learned was that the way that you think about conflict shapes how you show up in it. It shapes how we talk to people, how we respond or react to what's been said to us. It impacts our ability to listen effectively. It impacts our ability to be creative. So one of the best tips I learned from mediating for many, many years was to look inside and and consider how we view conflict. Are we saying to ourselves, this is going to be awful? This is going to be the most difficult conversation. I'm dreading it. If
Mm-hmm.
that's the mindset, that's exactly the energy that we bring into the conversation. And it's the culture that we create in that dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if we view it differently, such as this is an opportunity for us to have a conversation about something that matters. This is an opportunity for us to find out more about each other or come up with a workable solution. When that's the mindset, there's a much greater chance of success.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. In terms of, again, the viewers out there, folks, if you have any questions for Charmaine, feel free to chime in via the comments. If you wanted to share any other comments beyond questions, feel free to do that as well. Interactions is good. Interactions is good, right? As Charmaine has said, early interaction. In fact, let's do it early.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So in many ways, I guess, would you say that the world is there's more conflicts in the world than that there were before, or has it always been the same amount of conflicts? It's just on different things. What is your sense of, in general, conflicts as the world becomes more complex and fast moving and perhaps stressful for some people? What's your thought on? Is there a trend?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I think I change my answer to that question every day as we experience what we're going through. One of the things I can say through observation and through talking to different clients and to different professional circles that I belong to is that I'm hearing I don't know if it's a tendency right now or if it's maybe just more noticeable, but where there seems to be a lot of divisiveness in groups. We're either for or against something, and it's becoming more vocalized. In fact, I had a conversation with someone who in their workplace was talking about the fact that right now, she's an HR professional, right now she's having to facilitate conversations about mask or no mask and like all these really clearly divided conversations. And what she discovered, and I would agree with her, is that those often become the way that other issues get actually talked about and put on the table. So I think it's a challenging time. You talked about the fast moving change, and I think that's really worth putting an exclamation mark around, Dune, because it's really challenging whether you are a company business owner, a frontline staff, a leader, or you wear all kinds of hats in your professional world. The pace of change that we're experiencing in our business life as well as in our personal life is pretty rapid. And of course, we're being exposed to so much of that through watching the news and the social media feeds that we see. And I'm becoming more and more aware, and I'm hearing this from my corporate clients, of the need to sort of unplug and disconnect from some of that, because it's impacting our stress level. It's definitely impacting resilience. I'm hearing a lot of workplaces talk about disintegrating resilience that they're seeing within their teams. And, the other challenge is that when people are working from home, what they're experiencing from a work perspective is really impacting family now. There isn't that 15 or 20-minute drive home, or the the bus ride home where you
decompression zone.
Exactly, that decompression zone. You sort of open the door and you're at home, and that's really challenging. I don't know that I can think about a time in my professional life when that was so prevalent, I guess, for us. And so disconnecting or unplugging maybe is a better word from that, unplugging from technology and finding that decompression that you talked about, Dune. I think that's really important for us to figure out what is our transition time. How do we go from work, if we are working at home remotely, even part of the time, how do we go from that to being in our family and get rid of the kind of the messiness in between those two worlds?
Yeah. I'm going to bring this in. I know you are evolving your website branding and whatnot, but I'm just going to briefly bring it in just to tell folks out there that you do have some blog really articles that people can read about whether it's teamwork, whether it's communications, conflict management and whatnot. And I just want to very briefly, so if you were to go to Charmaine's website, as in the advertising post and in the video show notes later on, you'll be able to find these really useful and powerful articles. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm just looking at the screen, smiling to myself because I've got the old picture of the hairdo with me now below, and it's like, wow, there could be a multiple choice. Which one do you like better?
They're both great, my friend. They're both great. Have you noticed? Have you noticed my COVID hair with all the gray?
I think it looks lovely. That's exactly what I did. I went natural.
Yeah. Your video seems to have froze there. Oh,
there we go.
There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So yeah, I mean, people can go on there. We won't focus a lot of time on this conversation on the website, but do go and check it out, folks. Her website is. I'm just going to put it there just so that it is kind of right in there here.
I actually just wrote an article, it was a couple of weeks ago for the Canadian Payroll Association. They have a magazine called Dialogue, which I think is just a great name for a magazine. And so I wrote an article for them about resilience, how to reset resilience and bounce forward after change and challenge and crisis and adversity. And it's been, I shared that on LinkedIn, and it's been a well-read article, partly because a lot of people are talking right now about being zoomed out. I just love that Zoom became, a verb. It's sort of like Google, Google became an action word, and so did Zoom now. It's no longer just a platform. It's a thing that we do. And a lot of people are talking about being tired of screen time.
As I was just, listening to you, I wanted to get back to this idea of tell us a bit more about how you're enjoying the beautiful British Columbia. You and Chris moved there a few years ago now. You used to be in Sherwood Park, where I live, in fact. And were you in Edmonton at some point as well, or mostly in Sherwood Park?
Sherwood Park. And then, we had a cottage on the lake in a little tiny community called Plamondon, and sort of halfway between Fort McMurray and Edmonton. And we decided to try living there full time. Well, that was the reason we moved to Vancouver, because after we forgot how much snow there is, Dune, when you live on a lake in Alberta. We spent 6 months of each of the 2 years just with the snowblower digging ourselves out of not being able to get up the driveway. And I just thought, both Chris and I thought, let's swap the snow for rain. And we moved to Vancouver, North Vancouver. Absolutely love it here. And, I don't so much love feels like 3 months. I'm probably really over exaggerating there, but it feels like about 3 months of rain in the winter. I actually miss the snow. And one of the things I miss about Alberta is the colder it was, the sunnier it was.
Yeah, sunny Alberta, yeah.
Minus 40 always meant sunshine in Alberta. And I miss that piece, but I really do enjoy living in Vancouver. And I'm a water baby. That's part of the reason we loved having the cottage in Alberta and living there, and love living very close to the ocean here.
Very cool. Now, as you talk about water, I remember the first time I heard you spoke on stage was when you were sharing the story about your sailboat and the water and the life and death experience there. With that was, I'm sure that made its way into one of your books, or at least one of your books. That experience, right?
Actually, we get so many emails from people when they read my book on Toby's Terms, which is, we're celebrating 10 years of that book. I can't believe it.
Wow.
I wrote it 10 years ago. 2010 it came out, and we're in the second edition. But I used to get so many emails, I still do, where people say, when I got to this chapter, and they always say the chapter that the sailboat accident was, I couldn't put the book down. And the short version of the sailboat story was when Chris and I were dating. We had the cottage I told you about. There's the book. Yeah, when Chris and I were dating, we had a sailboat, a catamaran, and the Hobie Cat, 16-foot Hobie Cat, and we went sailing one day, and the boat capsized, which is generally no big deal. And if you're a sailor, apparently that's a lot of fun to capsize it on purpose. I don't get that, but anyhow, I couldn't get back on the boat. And after we righted the boat so that it was up properly in the water, I couldn't get back on the boat. And Chris came over and just gave me a little push up. And at that very moment when he pushed me up onto the boat, some wind caught the sails, even though we had unpleated them as we were going over. Some strange reason, the sails were cleated, wind caught the sail, and the boat took off with me dragging behind it. Wow. And Chris and I were separated in this very big lake, and have no idea how far apart we were from each other, but I got torn away from the boat. So here's the two of us, can't see each other. We're really far apart in the lake, and about a 4-mile swim back to shore. And the short story is that after we were swimming for what seemed like an eternity, it was probably an hour and a half or so, Chris actually swam, instead of going to shore, he swam to me so that we didn't have to be alone. And then we made the first of many critical decisions. We decided to swim back to shore where we knew there was people, rather than huddle up together and drift across to the other side of the lake, which is all farmland. And we could have, if we needed medical help, it could have been problematic. So we started swimming and swimming and swimming. And after about 4.5 hours, we didn't have wetsuits on. We had life jackets, though. After about 4.5 hours, Chris was becoming hypothermic and losing his ability to swim. He was completely cramped, and I still had a little bit of energy. And he told me that I needed to leave him and go get help. And I'll tell you, Dune, I was already alone once in that lake that day. I did not want to do that again. But Chris knew it was very serious for him. He figured he probably had about 15 minutes left. And he's, the look in his face told me that this was important and I needed to leave him. So I started swimming back to shore. And I'll tell you, shoreline was so far away, but started swimming back to shore. And eventually it was like a little metal fishing boat dropped from the sky. It was a man from Alberta and his son. And I told them to go get Chris and come back for me. But what was really important, what gave me the courage to leave Chris to go get help, because I wouldn't leave him, and Chris knew that I needed to go get help. What he said to me was, Charmaine, when we get back on shore, we've got a wedding to plan. And for me, it was like, woohoo! I've been waiting for this forever from this guy. So I turned into like this Olympic swimmer until the shock of that wore off very quickly. But I always tease Chris. It's been 25 years for us. And I tease Chris that, poor guy, he didn't think he was going to make it, right? But he had to be true to his word. And we were married a year later. And, it took me 7 years to get back on a sailboat, Dune. I was terrified. Chris got on the next day. The police found the boat and brought it home to us. And I waited 7 years in fear of that ever happening again.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that story. And it's a powerful story, and it's a wonderful story that has a great ending. And
yes.
I love, typical guy, right? Took that to, not just kidding.
He was probably thinking to himself, okay, I know there was a serious side, because Chris kind of, many years later, we talked about it, and we discovered that we had two really different experiences that day at the lake. Even though we went through the same thing, I'm air quoting here, the same thing, our experiences were entirely different. And I just wanted to fight the situation. Like, there's no way. I was really combative, which is not sort of, what I was trained around resilience, and everything went out the window for me for a period of time. And Chris actually surrendered to what was happening to him. And he was in we were both in very dire state, but he was in a much more challenging health crisis in the middle of that lake with hypothermia and losing all his mobility there. And, I learned a lot from Chris that day, because it taught me the power of knowing when we have to surrender to what's going on in our life, and when we just got to stick with it, and when there's time for both. And it was really cool. About 3 years, maybe it was 4 years after the sailboat incident, which, by the way, in the small community we lived in, Plamondon, 894 people, they talked about it for years. It was like for celebrities, the people who survived the accident. That's what happens when you have a small community.
Yeah.
But what was really cool is the campground where we were brought to from the dad and the son who rescued us. They were camping there about 3 or 4 years later, and the campground owner said, "Did you want to come and meet the people that rescued you?" Because that day, I mean, it was all a blur.
Wow.
I couldn't have told you what they looked like. I didn't even remember their name. It was so serious, because when they picked Chris up, he didn't have vital signs. It was really serious. And meeting the people who rescued us, their perception of what really happened was so different than mine and Chris's. And I had found this way of coping, of kind of minimizing the severity of what had happened. And when I heard their recount of the condition that we were both in when they rescued us, it was really interesting. But the funny part was, funny things happen in crisis. When they had gone to pick up Chris and came back for me, I couldn't get in the stupid boat again. So the second time that day, in that stupid lake, I can't get in a boat. And they're trying to pull me in. And the dad was getting mad at the son. And he's saying, "Get her in the boat, son, get her in the boat." and the young boy, who's about 13, he says, "Dad, I'm trying, but what if I touch her somewhere awkward? And all the awkward parts are frozen. They don't care." I'm in the middle of this family feud in the lake that just seemed to take forever. I'm yelling, "Just get me in the boat." So it was funny to see kind of this humor that happened. And then when we all got together, it was just this beautiful reunion. But we just laughed and laughed and laughed at some of the comical pieces, such as that one. And it was a great reminder for me that in tough times, like the times we're going through right now, there's still some things to smile about, and there's still some things to find humor in. And it's really important for us to find those moments.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And
he won an award, by the way, Dune. That 13-year-old boy wrote
nice.
I know, he wrote a story. I don't know if it was for his school or who it was, but he got a reward and a special commendation. And I think the mayor gave him an award for courage and all this. So that was kind of cool.
Small town of Plamondon, that's probably his uncle. the mayor was probably his uncle. Just kidding.
Family connections, yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Now, switching gear, by the way, I'm just doing a time check. I would love to continue the conversation beyond the hour, Charmaine, if you have some flexibility.
I do. You betcha.
Great. So tell us a little bit more about, I'm going to switch gear over to speaking and training and coaching. When you think about those three things, what's your typical mix? What is your ideal or desired mix, if you could, or do you just kind of go with the flow in terms of how much speaking, how much training, and how much coaching?
Yeah, great question. I would say the majority of the work that I do is in speaking, facilitation, and training. And I love that mix. I really do. I do a little bit of work in leadership mentoring and supporting people before they go into conflict scenarios. So I have contracts with companies and first responder groups, for example, that when the leaders are having to have conversations with individuals that they lead and they're struggling with how to frame the conversation, they may call me for some mentoring to help them cue up the conversation in the best way possible for success. And that is really, really important, because with leaders, what I'm hearing from leaders and what the research tells us is that about upwards of 45% of a leader or business owner's time is spent dealing with those people issues, conflict, disagreement. And yet most of them tell me they feel ill-equipped and unprepared to do that. In fact, whenever I do training with companies, I do my own little survey to find out how much training specific to conflict. So I'm not talking leadership training or diversity training. I'm talking conflict training. How much training have leaders had? And about 75% of them say they have had less than 3 hours of training ever on conflict, yet they're spending almost half of their work week dealing with it. And so it's really important to provide people with the skills, the processes, the tools, and then making sure that a company's framework and structure supports that. So I'll give you an example. Did some training with a large international company and with their leadership team. There was about 12 of them there. And when we started talking about bringing the training into the rest of the organization, I asked to see their policy on conflict, and they didn't really have one. And it was interesting for me because the policy that they had was really 2 sentences. If you have a disagreement with someone, go and talk to them. and therein lies the problem. And this happens at a lot of organizations. The policy and the procedure doesn't support people in having the dialogue. And I saw this time and time again with companies I worked with, that people didn't know how to operationalize the policy. So great, obviously we want to go talk to the person who we have the conflict with, but if I don't know how to start the conversation, don't know what to say, don't feel confidence in my skills, how do I do that? Which is one of the reasons why it often is avoided. So I also love working with organizations to help them build a supportive framework and train their HR folks and train their leaders on how to facilitate conversations. Because from the work you do, Dune, and we see it in project management all the time when we bring in groups of people to work together on a project, somebody ends up having to lead that messy conversation if there's a disagreement between 2 people. And a lot of people don't know how to do that effectively, and they make little mistakes that actually have big impacts on the outcome. And so learning how to facilitate dialogues in a fair and equitable way is really important. Yeah.
Now, as you talk through that, I remember when I first met you, I think it was 2010 or so, 2010. You might remember Sean Dubron from US there. She came.
Yes, I love Dr. Sean. Yes.
Dr. Sean. So
Dr. Sean.
I think that's where we first met, around 2010. And
I think so too.
Yeah, that's when I joined CAPS, right? So CAPS, of course, for the folks who are watching, some of you may be aware of CAPS, but there it is. And tell us a little bit about your involvement with CAPS and your CSP, Certified Speaking Professional. Very few in the world has that designation. I'm sure it was grueling to get it. And tell us a little bit about CAPS.
So as you know, I'm a big CAPS fanatic supporter. I love this organization. I love the CAPS community. I've belonged to a lot of organizations. You have, Dune, over the years. Our listeners have, professional associations, trade associations. And I've also left a lot of associations. And CAPS is one that I'll tell you, they have strongly, in my opinion, created a sense of community. And I have never more than now appreciated that organization, because the way that CAPS has gone out to support their membership in bringing together events virtually. We have our community of practice groups where members are getting together to look at different areas of building their business. So just a great community. And I also love the fact that they have requirements for speakers. And you asked about the CSP. Yes, it was grueling. The Certified Speaking Professional designation was a real challenge. Just the tracking of information that we had to do to demonstrate that we had reached the number of hours as a paid professional speaker over a certain period of time, getting a number of references from people and there was a very specific time period for that. And I was just blown away by the references and testimonials that came in from people. And then there was also a review by your peers where we had to be reviewed and critiqued by other CSPs. The process was challenging, and I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad I did it because it is a profession that I believe strongly in, I work in, and for me, it was I set myself that goal of I wanted to become a CSP. As soon as I learned about it in CAPS in the early days, I said, that's going to be my goal. I'm going to work towards it. And that's what I did. And it was, a number of years that it took to meet all the criteria.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the ceremony where they treated you guys like rock stars or famous red carpet and spare no expense. Tell us a bit about that.
I mean, the medal you get, it weighs so much. Your neck is like this. You get this beautiful medal, but it was incredible. I was in the US for the National Speaker Association conference, which is where they award the CSPs for that particular year. And it was beautiful. First of all, to hear from other CSPs, certified speaking professionals, long-standing Hall of Fame professionals in the speaking industry, and then we come up and we are awarded with our CSP, and you get this. For me, I call it my sort of Olympic medal. It felt like the Olympics.
It looks just like it. Also,
does. It's this big, huge gold medal. And then I think the really special part for me, Dune, was looking out into the audience, and there were a few other CAPS members that year that were also receiving their CSP, and also to see members from CAPS right across Canada in the audience, and just to feel that camaraderie and that support from people.
Now, what year was that you got your CSP?
I think that was 3 years ago.
So 2017 or so.
Yeah.
Let me.
And then the next year you have to wear your medal back, so you got to wear it.
Yeah. Well,
I never did find any earrings to go with it, though. So I need to make some CSP earrings so that you can wear it, totally be decked out.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, congratulations on a very significant achievement there. It is the highest level of achievement in that association. Now, let me get to the next part, and that is when you think about organizational development work. Obviously, conflict management is a big part of that. But do you see some trends with the organization that you work with in terms of the any kind of trends that you cite? You can cite a little bit for us to kind of think about.
Yeah, there's some trends that I'm seeing and really noticing right now. One of the trends is that there is an increase or an attempt to have increased in communication. And I really like this trend that I'm seeing. There are other examples. I had some individuals that I know who said they haven't actually had a team meeting since COVID. And I'm thinking, what? That's March. That's like 6 months. But the majority of people that I'm connected to and that I work with are really working hard at communicating effectively, using what I call cascading messages, which are communicating the same messages in a variety of different ways over a period of time, because we all zone out, as you know that, Dune.
Yeah.
The work that you do. I mean, our brains, we hear something, we zone out. I mean, when you're leading projects, I'm sure you see that when you've got a diverse group of people around the table. We're in the meeting, but part of our thought process may be out there. And, it's really important right now to increase communication and the effectiveness of it. I'm also seeing a trend where there is a heightened awareness around resilience. And I get really excited about that because, I'm I believe so wholeheartedly in the importance of helping people develop skills to be resilient. The other piece that I'm seeing is around a trend that I'm excited about is that I don't know if it's around creativity or innovation, but so many workplaces looking for innovative ways to be connected to one another, whether they are working all together in their place of work in a physically distanced way, or whether they're working remotely, or they kind of have a hybrid scenario going on. There's a lot of creativity going into how do we create this new workplace culture, whether it be temporary or permanent, or we don't know what it is, but how do we create this new workplace culture? And I'm really enjoying the conversations I'm having around creativity. There's another trend that's frustrating for many, which is the getting used to technology. And not every workplace is used to being on Zoom meetings or having to use technology as a way of communicating. And I learned a great lesson. I'm going to share it here, Dune, because it just was so powerful for me. I was doing a training online for a group a couple of months ago. It was about 3 months ago. And one of the individuals in the training, so first of all, there was enough people that we were going into the third screen on Zoom. So you know how you have to keep pressing the arrow to see everybody.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were concerned. They'd never used Zoom. And so they didn't know that there's other people on the other screens. And they were feeling worried that we were starting without having everybody in there. And it reminded me of the importance of not assuming that because we use a platform every day, other people may not have. So that was a great reminder for me to be able to share that there's other screens in Zoom. But the big lesson came out when we had a little bit of a coffee break and just general chit chat. And one of the participants said, "I'm so uncomfortable on camera." And I asked her what she meant by that. And she said, "I don't know where to look." She said, "I'm so distracted by myself. I'm judging my hair. I'm judging my makeup. Every time I move, it's backwards. She said, "I am so distracted. I honestly hardly heard anything from the first hour of the training."
Yeah.
So, and we had a lot of interaction and breakout rooms, all kinds of things going to keep people engaged. But the reminder for me was that for a lot of people, it's really uncomfortable to be on camera. And we need to be cognizant of that when we are working remotely and using technology as a form of connection and working together.
Yeah, you bet. Well, thank you for sharing that. And let me ask you I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And so when I reach out to say, Charmaine, would you like to chat for an hour and a bit on this live thing? And you said yes. Were there areas that you want to chat about that we haven't gotten to yet, my friend? Areas. Just kind of just think, opening that box there and.
Man, we've covered a lot of ground today. I love the way that you just sort of weave and dash into different parts of life. I can't think of anything that I wanted to go deeper in, but I guess one piece that I'll share is early on in the conversation, Dune, you were asking about lessons learned from the correctional world. And there was a couple of other lessons. I was actually watching Suits the other day. And like, if you haven't, I shouldn't be the spoiler alert. But anyways, there's a scene in there that has to do with jail. And I found myself reflecting on, my life as a correctional officer. And my brain very quickly went not to the hardships and the scariness of it and some things that happen in jail that you don't want to hear or see about. My brain immediately went to 3 people. And those 3 people were mentors in my life. John Bromley was one of them. He was one of my first supervisors. Ken and Diana, they were all supervisors. And then my head also went to 3 inmates who I'll never forget because they completely changed my life through the lessons I learned from each of them and changed it in a really positive way. And I guess for me, the other lesson was the importance of having those mentors or role models, and that it might be 30 years before we make that connection about the impact that they had on some part of our life. And so I just wanted to preface that. I didn't say that earlier, but this is a really great time right now in the world to know who your support system is, who your mentors are, who your champions are.
Yeah, it's time to go deep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna surprise you by bringing up a photo here, just by way of wanting to
Okay.
introduce Christopher into the mix. So let me just see. I think I see it here from earlier, where there was a photo that I got, and then I sort of scroll up, and it went away on me here.
Oh
So
no.
yeah, I was looking for a couple of things, and uh, but while I'm doing that,
Yeah.
I want to ask you another question, and that is, you know, um, do you have a high point in your various careers? There's a story where you say that was a highlight of that particular career. Anything comes to mind? I realize it's a bit of an ad hoc, moment's notice here, but do you have a
Yeah,
story of a highlight?
I do. And it's from a long time ago, but it is so powerful for me.
Mm,
Um, After I left the correctional system, we were living in a community called Lac La Biche, which is in
hmm
Alberta. And I opened up a teen drop-in center. I was working for the municipality. So this is long before I had my own business. I was working for the municipality and opened up a youth teen drop-in center.
mm.
And I called it Youth Teen Drop-in Center, and no one came. And then this little boy who was 10, his name was Eric, he came over one day and he said, if you want kids to come here, you should change the name.
Mm.
And I said, really?
Wow.
I
Here's a
know.
subject matter expert. Here's a
At
subject matter expert.
10. And I thought, well, you're just a brilliant little creature. Tell me more about that. So we had this conversation, and all of a sudden, some more of his friends came over, and more of his friends. And the next day, more of his friends came over. And soon we had a crowd. We had a bunch of youth and teens, and they decided that for them to keep coming there, they had to change the name because they didn't want to associate with Youth Teen Drop-in Center. So we had a contest, and the Twilight Zone was what the Twilight Zone Youth Teen Drop-in Center. I got it in really small letters, but
Yeah.
the Twilight Zone was the name they picked. But this little Eric became just a huge teacher in my life. He went through a number of really significant challenges, more challenges than many of us will ever go through in a life. And this was a place of comfort and safety and friendship for him to go to the center. And when we moved, I always wondered whatever happened to him. Well, fast forward 10 years after that time, almost 11 years, I'm working in one of my businesses that I owned in Fort McMurray. And I get a call from one of my staff, and she said, there's this individual looking for you, and he's been coming in here every day, and he won't leave his name, but he's here now. Could you come over? And I came over because my two offices were right across the street. And I came running over, and I opened the door, and there he was. Looked the same. He had the most beautiful smile, and just his eyes lit up when he smiled. Recognized him immediately, and he wanted to share with me that everything was okay. And out of his pocket, he took a little activity that we did 11 years ago. He had a picture of my dog at the time, whose name was Dukes, a white German Shepherd, and who they were quite fond of each other. And he had this little exercise that we did. And we basically took all the kids that had come that particular day to the drop-in center, to the Twilight Zone, and we had them spell their name like, Charmaine, Char. And then you had to think of a descriptive word that started with that letter. And he had his from 11 years ago. And
Wow.
I share that story because it reminds me every day that we never know how the way we show up in the world in that particular moment could impact someone's life in a way that we never knew. I mean, I was fortunate to meet him after 11 years and hear this, but we're meeting people, you're meeting people, everyone listening is meeting people all day long. We never know that a minute and the way that we show up in someone's life could could transform it in some way, positive, negative, or neutral, but can transform it. So it really reminds me about taking stock of how I show up in the world.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to surprise you.
There he is. Oh, and that's the eWomen Award. Yes, there's Christopher.
There you go.
There we go. Happily ever after still. I think that picture was in 2013.
Yeah,
That's a long time ago.
he came back from the death from the because you said his vital signs were not even there when they brought him into the boat, right? So you kind of got a brand new man there.
I did, and I always share this story. This guy, I'll tell you, another reason I think we had to move from the lake is he lost 2 wedding rings in that lake. that lake was not our friend, but. Yeah, we met when I was just finishing high school, so we have a long history together.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to. So another question I have for you is, when you work with speaking, as you do, what was the most memorable lesson that you learned about speaking? Like, again, professional speaking in front of a large crowd, let's say keynote speaking, and let's say professional keynote speaking. I know there's many different lessons and whatnot. We're not trying to do a training course here, but is there one kind of key kind of skill or key technique or something that, and maybe you have a story behind that as well, that you want to share with the speakers out there?
I guess one of my stories is learning to deal with embarrassment in a way that's comfortable for the audience. So the story was I was keynoting in front of a group of high-level executives in Alberta, and I had pants on. I had a suit on, and in one of my pant legs, my pants weren't flowing right. Like they were just irritating me. And I'm like, what is going on with my pants? Are they stuck in my nylons? What's going on? Well, and everybody kept staring at my shoes. And I'm thinking, what is this audience? Do I have different color shoes on? Because I've done that before by accident when you don't turn the lights on to grab your shoes and you've got same shoes, different colors. So anyways, I'm looking down. I can't see what they're looking at. And I'm so distracted by this group who is not engaged. And I asked everyone, I did a check-in question. Nobody's going to fess up to what's going on. And then at break time, I go to see what's going on with this pant leg, like what's going on. Well, inside the pant leg is a pair of Chris's underwear because he doesn't believe in using Bounce for the dryer. So that's what was hanging out of my pant leg, just enough for people to know it was Hanes underwear. And so I thought, well, how does one deal with this? So it was kind of fun. It was a group of executives and project managers, and the course I was teaching was on communication and feedback. So I came back in and asked if anyone wanted to give any feedback about, the last hour. No, nobody's making eye contact. They're all looking at my shoes, and I said, nobody looking for this. So we had a good laugh about it, but it taught me that, weird things happen and we have to be able to cope with it because it will impact people's learning. And so we actually use that as an example, alive in the moment. What could feedback have sounded like? How could you have given me feedback? Hey, Charmaine, you've got underwear hanging from your pant. Like, how could you give that feedback? And then the other tip for anyone, don't try out new technology the day of a speaking engagement, even if it's a magic marker and you think magic markers are, disaster proof and fail proof. I had found these cool markers in Staples that were liquid ink. And I thought, oh, isn't this cool and fun? And the colors were so vibrant. So I'm writing on the flip chart as I'm doing a training session for a large group. And I sometimes talk with my hands, and I had the marker in my hand with the lid off. And as I talked with my hands, out of the marker flew this orange liquid ink, and it was going towards the man in the front row. And I'm like, ooh, watch the ink. And it did right on his crisp white iron shirt, big orange dot. Now, the funny part was I was so apologetic and I was so sorry. And he says, well, if you think that looks bad, Charmaine, go look in the mirror. And I thought, what? I was covered in every time I touched my face, yes, it was like a mosaic going on. So I learned that day that we need, as part of preparation, even if it's as simple as a magic marker, test it first, use it first, because again, and how to deal with embarrassments in front of a group.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Those are funny stories, and it could happen to any of us, right?
It
And
could, it could.
yeah, yeah. Let me go further down that path. So, if you think about all of your various careers, was there a bit of a low point in any one of those careers where you have a story that you'd like to share? Where obviously you recovered from it quickly and moved on from there and learned some things. But was there a low point in any of your careers that you wanted to kind of touch on, my friend? Again, reminder to the folks who are watching, here's looking at somebody who's successful and living the life. You can guarantee they have some low points in their career as well, but they have to make they make through it and live through it and fight through it. And you shared a bit of obviously a very low story, life and death story with the lake, but professionally, was there a story that you want to share?
Yeah, I think one of the stories was before I started my business and I was working for government. I actually worked for all three levels of government at different times as an employee. And one of the low points for me was just when I was working for, it was the health authority at the time. And my job was and I loved the job, actually. I was working in psychiatry, and my job was to develop programs for our mental health consumers, which was the language of the day way back when. And I remember one of the low parts being just the roadblocks that we sometimes face when trying to get something moving forward. And the patients had come up with this great idea for a program that they wanted to see. They helped me put it together. And then there was just so many roadblocks to get through and so much red tape to get through. And I remember watching how disheartening it was for the patients with this great idea that they contributed to just have it seem to take forever. Good news is it eventually got going and went really well. But I just remember thinking, wow, this was a lot of time and energy spent overcoming these hurdles. Wouldn't it have been awesome to put that time and energy into delivering the program? And that's when I think I started thinking about maybe this kind of a structure is not the structure for me, because my entrepreneurial mindset or tendencies. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, so sort of in my blood. It didn't always jive. It wasn't always congruent with the structure that I was working in as an employee. So I think it was challenging and very difficult for me. But it also became one of the reasons why I decided to leave my job and go open up a business.
Yeah. Again, always, whenever you're at a low point, that is always, an opportunity potentially to kind of almost like slingshot yourself past that point, I guess. Use it as a little bit of a time to take stock and to really kind of move to the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah, as they say, necessity is the mother of all invention, and when we're at a low point, there's all kinds of necessities that kicks in, right? Whether it's survival, whether it's just whatever it is. So whenever we're at a very low point, it could very well be a very powerful point to spring from.
Yeah.
As they say, I hit rock bottom, and then it was from that solid rock bottom that I built myself back up. We hear that all of the time in all aspects of life, right? All walks of life, right?
True.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. So, Charmaine, as we round the corner on wrapping this up here, if there's any other kind of areas that you want to talk about, we can certainly go there. But if we kind of cover the key areas, I'm gonna have you take us out, my friend. I know you love singing.
You want me to sing a song?
Yeah, this would be see people who tune into
Okay.
expert conflict resolution facilitator and correctional officer and keynote speaker and on and on and on facilitator. But they want to say, I want to see something, maybe I'm not, I haven't seen before. Are you willing and able, my friend?
I will sing a song.
Okay, hold on. Before you do that, right after you sing the song, you're going to do a monologue. You're going to take us out however you like.
Okay.
And you can throw in a poem if you want. This is your show now. So right after we're done, I'll just see you in the green room. So hang in there for another minute or so. I'll just give you a high five in there. But let me just say thanks to our viewers as well. Folks, thanks for tuning in now and for tuning in later in the recorded version of the video here. And you've been listening to Charmaine Hammond, an expert in many things. But you're going to see something that you don't normally see on her website. And that is she's going to take us out with a song of her choice. 2 to 3 songs if you like.
Okay, you're really pushing it there.
Oh, hold on. Hold on. There's a comment coming in I wanted to feature.
Are they starting to run now that they've heard she's going to sing? Because
Melanie Kidder says, this was an excellent. My lunch break is over, but I would check to watch the end. Thanks so much to both of you.
Well, Melanie, you can tell me later if I should sign up for America's Got Talent. And I know the answer is no. So
okay, you can warm up your vocals if you like. This show is now completely yours. You can take as long as you like, my friend. So again, everybody, Charmaine Hammond.
I'm going to just close it with one song, not several, as Dune asked. I'm going to do one song. And this is actually a song that I grew up singing with my 2 sisters, my mom and my dad. And so it's very special to me. And I'll just share with you. My dad plays guitar and has an amazing voice. And I did not inherit the voice in the family, not for singing, but my sisters have incredible voices as well. And so my mom, dad, and sisters and I used to sing this song called Lonely Little Robin. So I'll sing it for you. There's a lonely little robin in a tree by my door, and he waits for his mate to return evermore. So remember, please remember that I'm lonely too, like a lonely little robin. I'm waiting for you. There you go. Lonely Little Robin.
Lonely Little Robin. I'm now going to request one of the songs from the 80s.
Like SATURDAY, night, S, like that.
You go. Yeah, you bet. Keep going.
That's all the words I know. I'm gonna have to go into the
No. That's earlier than 80s.
We'll have to jam together, Dune.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So thank you so much again, Charmaine, and say hi to Chris for me. Give him a hug for me as well. It's been a year since I've seen Chris. It's been years since I've seen him. And best wish with your continued enjoyment of the beautiful British Columbia. And I'm going to ask you one thing. What's the most, your most favorite thing of this BC, British Columbia? Have you discovered that? Have you kind of sort of hit on one thing that says, I just love that?
Yeah, you know what it is? Oh, I just love going to the water, sitting at the ocean on one of the big honking logs on the beach, and just closing my eyes and feeling the sun on my face and listening to the water and just kind of the subtle noises all around. I love that. I find that so incredibly therapeutic and relaxing, and it just, for me, makes it feel like I'm grounded.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. And folks, my wish for you is that you too are grounded in your own peace and joy of life. The simple joy of life, particularly at times like this, COVID and all of the challenges there. The simple joy of life can help us cope with the situation. So as you mentioned earlier, Charmaine, let's slow down. Let's go within. Let's unplug as necessary. Let's really, again, be kind to one another. So Have a wonderful rest of your day, folks, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you again,
Thank you.
Charmaine.
Thank you.